I want to talk about this executive order and what it means for Compass Pathways. First, you, though, are using synthetic psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression, TRD. I just want you to remind everybody on where you are in terms of clinical trials, where you are with exactly what you're treating, availability, and that sort of thing right now. And then we'll talk about the EO.
No, thanks very much. And it's a great pleasure to be back here with you both. So we are studying synthetic proprietary form of psilocybin, COMP360, in treatment-resistant depression. That's depression that does not respond to at least 2 drugs. That affects 4 million people in the United States. And these are people who have had no real treatment options until relatively recently. We're also studying it in PTSD, which affects more than 13 million people. A couple of months ago, we put out the results from our late-stage studies, our 2 late-stage studies, which showed both of those studies that for a significant percentage of patients, there was a clinically meaningful response in terms of their symptoms of depression based on just 1 or 2 administrations of COMP360. So we're redefining what rapidity and durability can look like with this medicine. We have discussed those findings with the FDA, and we're engaged on working with them so that as we generate more data, we can submit it to them for that review. So that process is already well underway with a view to potentially completing that regulatory submission later this year.
Kabir, one thing I want to go back to what you said, significant results. What does that mean, significant, as a result of the studies? And is it lasting? Is it something that once this is done, I hate to say a person's cured, but I would like to say a person's cured, that they will have a different health trajectory going forward? So can you just address those two?
Absolutely. So what we showed in one of the studies was that a quarter of all patients had a real meaningful reduction in their symptoms from just 1 administration. In the second study, that goes to 40%. And to your point on durability, what we're showing is that from just 1 or 2 administrations, 1 or 2 sessions with psilocybin, that can last out to 6 months. So while this would not be characterized as a cure, what that suggests is for many patients, maybe just 2 or 3 or 4 sessions a year can keep them well over the long term. And again, compared to anything that's available for this population, and again, these are patients with this chronic recurrent depression, people who have typically been failed by multiple medicines over the course of their illness, this truly is transformational and game-changing.
And look, I'd also remind people that, when we think about treatments such as this for anything, whether we're talking about GLP-1s, it's not like you take 1 shot and you don't have to take any more again. And one doctor told me with regard to comparing GLP-1s to like exercise, for example, to stay fit, you have to keep going to the gym over and over again. So, you can think about treatment like that.
And listen, I do think about this, Kabir, because I think we all know people who have either been in a tough way and numerous medications just don't do it. And so if you can actually help somebody live a more normal or a normal and healthy life and feel good, it's a game changer for them. So let's go to the executive order. I believe on the executive order, you said that Saturday's order was a, quote, important step forward in accelerating access without compromising rigorous science. So tell us a bit more about this executive order, what it really means. What will you do differently, or what can you do differently now because of it?
Yeah, well, first, we welcome the executive order because it's really grounded in 2 fundamental principles. First, that patients urgently need new treatments and they've waited too long for that. But second, that it must be informed by rigorous science. So the focus on FDA-approved medicines, doing the studies to the right level, and so on. So we welcome the executive order. What it talked to was some potential regulatory flexibility around the FDA moving perhaps faster. And there's talk of certain vouchers being given out. We don't yet know who may receive those, but that's one element. And second, these medicines today are illegal. So until and unless they receive approval, they are not able to be made available. There is, the DEA needs to change that status. An executive order accelerates the process of that. So taken together, this is really about, first, those medicines like ours that are very late in development, potentially getting to patients significantly sooner, but it also encompasses other actions that potentially make it easier to research these medicines, which today is complicated and takes time and a lot of money because of some of the restrictions that have been around them, but also directs a number of agencies within the government to work together to really build the implementation, the infrastructure, and to accelerate the potential for psychedelics to get to patients across the spectrum of serious mental illnesses.
And I would assume...
So together we...
Yeah, no, forgive me. No, I was just thinking though, as you were saying that, expediting everything, and that includes, I was thinking, Tim, coverage by healthcare as well.
Well, that's certainly, yeah.
Part of this, a big part of it.
Well, so answer that and go there for us. What it means for this to be expedited, what the next step of actually getting this covered by insurance, at least here in the United States, would be. What's the outlook for that?
So assuming an FDA approval, so if we are approved for COMP360, then we believe that the data we've generated showing the efficacy and the safety, this is well tolerated, generally safe. First, we need that to get an FDA approval, and then we will take that data, that profile, and work with commercial insurers, government payers as well. And we're confident in the strength of that data, particularly relative to anything that's available for patients with this chronic refractory depression today. And we're confident in delivering that value through insurance to patients.
Okay, we'll have to wait on that one. There are a lot of steps before that actually happens. But before you get there, and because you are a publicly traded company, there are a lot of companies that are working on using psychedelics to treat treatment-resistant depression. Where do you think about differentiation? And what's your biggest competitive advantage to other companies that are working on this?
First, we are significantly ahead of other companies. So I think it's important to say that we have the potential, if approved, to be the first in here. But again, psychedelics are very different. So there are a number of dimensions of difference around the different modalities. There is the nature of the experience. Psilocybin is an experience, typically a patient will be wearing eye shades with music playing in a relaxed environment, exactly as we have used in our clinical trials. It's a very inner-directed experience. It's an experience where the patient is working through the acute psychedelic experience, allows them to work through their sense of self in relation to their symptoms. That's a very different experience from some other psychedelics. And so those differences in terms of the experience, the nature of the subjective experience, as well as perhaps duration and so on, those will actually all become apparent over time. We believe, again, with the rapidity, durability we've already shown, and nobody else has come close to doing the size of studies we've done yet to come to that, with that and the nature of the experience itself with psilocybin, that indeed will be differentiated and will be compelling both to providers and to patients.
So I am curious too, though, we were thinking about this, Kabir, when we were thinking about talking with you, that if you go back to 2024, you did see the FDA reject an MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD from Lycos Therapeutics. They were a private company, I should point out, and they cited the quality of research and questions over the clinical trial design. Is there anything Compass is doing differently to ensure it won't meet the same fate, or do we need to be worried at all?
We have conducted a very different program. So the Lycos program was designed many years ago in a different era. Compass has conducted this really to the highest standards of rigor. First, in our 2 late-stage studies, we actually have over 800 patients represented. The studies themselves are very well aligned with the FDA's own draft guidance from 3 years ago for how they want to see studies designed. We have been incredibly rigorous about collecting all safety data, all elements of the subjective experience and how they impact on it. And also, we are not providing therapy alongside the drug. We're providing the medicine with support, with patient safety absolutely at the heart of it. So it's really a very, very different model from the MDA model, not only in terms of what it actually means for the patient, but also in the way that we have conducted the trials. So we are confident that based on the data we're seeing, based on the robustness of that data, we will have a very different experience with the regulatory process.
Kabir, on that, and only 20, 30 seconds left on this to follow on Carol's question, what are the remaining clinical risks for psilocybin therapy in treatment-resistant depression?
We will work with the agency. We are already working with the agency. We believe strongly that the data we've shown on efficacy and safety is compelling, but ultimately it is the FDA's decision as to whether to approve. We are excited about what the EO means for us. We're excited about the path forward and getting this to patients as soon as possible.
Bottom line, it's a big change, big move, that executive order.
It is. Absolutely. It's a great move for the field.